Okay, we're recording. Greetings, human beings. Welcome, everybody, to the 10th episode of Unlicensed Therapists. It's a platform where we dissect the human experience in the 21st century and explore how we think, how we relate, and how we believe. Now, earlier this year, there was a new comedy special, quote-unquote comedy special, that was released that featured an AI version of the legendary, one of my favorite comedians and one of many people's favorite comedians of all time, George Carlin, who died in 2008. The special was an hour long and was put out by the YouTube podcast channel Dudesy. George Carlin's daughter, Kelly Carlin, came out. She was, seems furious at this, and she's here to talk about it. She put out a statement on Twitter, or X, saying, quote, "My dad spent a lifetime perfecting his craft from his very human life, brain, and imagination. No machine will ever replace his genius. These AI-generated products are clever attempts at trying to recreate a mind that will never exist again. Let's let the artist's work speak for itself. Humans are so afraid of the void that we can't let what has fallen into it stay there." So Kelly is here today. She's joining us on the podcast. She is the author of A Carlin Home Companion, Growing Up with George, and the excellent documentary, George Carlin's American Dream, for which she won an Emmy. Hi, Kelly. Welcome. Thank you for doing this. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me again, Ali. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, and congratulations on the Emmy. That's and the documentary is amazing. It's a two-part. I think it's a two-part documentary, right?
It is. It's a two-parter.
HBO.
Judd had so much to put in there. I mean, there's no way we could have done a 2-hour documentary on my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, his career alone spanned in 5 decades. So,
Yeah.
And then you add all of the family stuff that really was, kind of the bigger, broader context for the documentary that, I'm really proud of that part, because Judd, I didn't have any editorial control over it, but Judd really leaned into my memoir and really, understood that I was here to tell the family story. And so I was really honored that he respected my work so much that he really wove it in between. So yeah, and it was very exciting to win the Emmy. It was crazy. Never a dream, never a thing in my, like this. I just want to say this to people out there. You never know what's going to happen in your life. Even the things you forget to dream about may walk into your life and happen. So know that truly anything is possible.
Yeah, no, it was excellent. It was just done. I mean, I learned so much about it, and I'm a huge George Carlin fan, so I've known a lot about read everything I could get my hands on. But just hearing it from the perspective, of you and his childhood friends, and just that part of it was new, and actually really brings into focus how he reinvented himself so many times and just killed it each time. Like, he just rocked every iteration of him. And, I think people, it's got everybody. I think, Jon Stewart's in it, Bill Burr's in it, Stephen Colbert, like all of these comedians are just talking about the kind of influence he had on them. Which is no surprise, but it's just, I think it was excellent, highly recommended documentary. So congratulations on that again.
Thank you.
But so what happened? You heard this thing came out in January, and I heard it. I mean, I heard it after I read about what you had said, and it was so, I mean, to me, it felt so creepy listening to it, and it wasn't that funny. It was, how did you feel? Like, what was your, can you share with us your emotional journey, like what you went through when you heard it, when you discovered that this thing had been made, and then after that, when you listened to
it? So I guess it dropped on January 9th. And just so your viewers know, or listeners know, you should not be able to find it on the internet anymore. We did ask them to take it down. I think there was one version of it that did end up there. It may still be up there, but do us a favor and don't watch it. So it dropped on the 9th, and someone sent me an email on the 10th. I can't even remember who it was like, "Hey, did you approve this George Carlin special?" And I'm like, "George Carlin special? What?"
Yeah.
Of course not. Like, no. And immediately, like, someone sent me a link, and I don't know, to put it nicely, murderous rage went through my veins basically at the beginning. Mama bear, we might want to call it mama bear protective energy kicked in.
Yeah.
All of my instincts kicked in to protect my father. I watched maybe 5 minutes of it. Didn't need to watch more than that. Didn't really care if it was funny. Didn't really care if they'd done a good job or not.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Yeah.
Was not the point to me. The point was that they had stolen his name and his identity and his persona and his hard work and his 50 years of hard work to build a position, not position as in like prestige, but his take on the planet, right? You know, and his human take on it all. And so yeah, and talked to some people, talked to my dad's manager, let him see it also, and talked to my publicist, and he said, well, you need to put a statement out on social media because that's what people do these days. I'm like, really? We don't do a press release anymore? He's like, no, we don't do those things. I mean, I'm sure they do. But anyway, so the thing you read just came out of me. I just was like, I wasn't strategic. I wasn't like, what do I need to say? I was like, these are the things that I know right this moment about this. And I put it out there and was shocked at the amount of attention I got. And it got still shocked that the tweet that I sent that statement out got something like 5.6 million views on an algorithm where I can't get any traction, Allie.
Yeah, I know. I still don't know how that works at all.
Still confused over there.
Especially since Elon
followers. No one seems to see my stuff anymore. But man, it got in front of some eyeballs and quickly. And before I knew it, by the end of the day, journalists were lining up. And one of the first ones, which was very funny, was TMZ reached out to me. And, you know, those of us in the entertainment industry and live in LA, we don't have a fondness for TMZ, really. We make fun of them. But I was reaching out to a dear friend who also, a bunch of comics reached out to me, started texting me, W. Kamau Bell being one of them. And so, you know, and he's widely known now, CNN shows and all. And so I started reaching out to him saying, you know, TMZ just reached out, you know, like rolling my eyes, eye roll emoji. And he's like, oh no, you need to go talk to Harvey Levin. He's great. He's a lawyer. He wants to talk about this stuff. And can you imagine a better audience who needs to hear this? And I'm like, oh, well, he's got a great point. So I went on TMZ, had a great talk with him, actually. I think it's still up on the internet. But so just lots of fury was happening and lots of people reaching out. Very few people were championing it. Saw the comments, the first comments underneath the video. They were like, oh, this is so funny. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you know, going, oh, please. My dad would not talk about Taylor Swift. I'm sorry. Like the shit they decided to, you know, whatever. And then slowly as my tweet got more and more traction, I think those people were migrating over there and giving their 2 cents in the comments too. So, and within a week, we had dropped a lawsuit on them.
Great, yeah, and this is against the YouTube hosts, right?
This is against Dudesy, the Dudesy podcast. And then what happened, interestingly enough, was, well, we thought we had a landmark case. I mean, I started talking to everybody in LA in the business who's on the front lines of this, mostly SAG and AFTRA actors, because they had just finished their battle against AI inside of their contract. Because studios want to just steal people's existence so that they don't have to pay real actors anymore. So they fought for that. It's not a perfect contract, but it's a start. And so I was immediately folded into some people who were leading the way on the legislation and stuff. And so the minute we dropped the contract, the lawsuit on these people, they then talked to the New York Times. The New York Times then decided to do a story.
Mhm.
And they told the New York Times that AI had not written the special,
Mhm. Oh,
that they had written it, that Kurt had written it actually. And that the only thing they really used for AI was the voice generator. And then I was like, and that's fine. I mean, the lawsuit's still, we're still in it right now. Things are
mhm.
happening with it. But, and we were kind of, I mean, part of me was bummed because we really did want like the big landmark case. We wanted to be the tip of the
Mhm.
spear, to be like, all right, you know, you picked the wrong person, the wrong estate, the wrong artist, the wrong fan base to do this with. And, you know, it was interesting because the Dudsey people were like, well, anyone who listens to our podcast know that it's not really an AI bot on the podcast. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but that's your whole premise. And to the casual observer like myself who walks by and checks it out, I watched the episode where it dropped this thing, where this AI bot said, yeah, I made a Carlin special and I dropped it and here it is.
Mhm.
So sorry for us for assuming differently, but it's what you people
But
said.
how is it? How is it different legally? Like in the sense that, you know, supposing, you know, they wrote it and whoever created the content, but they're still using George Carlin's likeness and his voice to
Exactly.
sort of, it's still misrepresentation by someone who can't
Yes.
come in and say that that's not me, right?
It's called right of privacy. I'm sorry, right of publicity.
Right.
And there's a really strong version of that law in California and New York, obviously because of the entertainment industry and other people's reputations. And basically what that law states is that you cannot use the name and likeness of living people or dead people in order to, you know, further your own business, misrepresent them, make money off of them,
Yeah.
you know, use them for fraud of some kind, right? You know, and so we are basically suing on two legs, one of which is the right of privacy. You completely violated our rights of publicity. Sorry, not privacy. I keep saying that.
Mhm.
And because they used his name right in the special. It's called George Carlin, I'm Glad I'm
I'm
Dead.
dead. Yeah.
But they used his name. They didn't go
Yeah.
Dudesy imitates George Carlin or Dudesy presents. It was just, no, this is a George Carlin special. So that was extremely ballsy.
Mhm.
And then, of course, they tried to imitate his voice through some sort of AI generated voice. I don't know if someone read the script and then they sent it through something, but that's not okay. And then
Mhm.
they kind of represented him from the back, this animated version of his ponytail looking out at a fake animated audience,
Mhm.
still audience. And then the other thing we were using was our intellectual property rights,
Mhm.
which is that this not only dilutes the value of our intellectual property
Mhm.
by pretending that it's George Carlin. You are putting it out there to people who may be discovering George Carlin for the first time through this thing,
Right.
which completely devalues his original IP because it is not him. And then my concern also was, well, if you leave something like this up there and then AI goes off in the future and you go, hey, AI, make a George Carlin imitation about some subject matter or whatever, and AI will go and vacuum up everything it can,
Mhm.
you know, and it'll see that possibly, however AI works in a nanosecond or 5 years from now, and
Yeah.
think that that's George Carlin. And then that too will definitely devalue and water down his
Yeah.
actual work and his actual intellectual
Yeah.
property.
And I know, so I know that you get asked this, and everybody gets asked this, and everybody just asks this all the time. Just like, you know, they say, "What would Jesus do?" Very common question, especially now with everything that's happening in the world, and pretty much every issue, everything your dad did was so relevant. Everything he talked about, there's always something for everything, and people always ask, you know, what would George Carlin say? Would he be a leftist? Would he be, you know, on the right? Would he be this or that? You know, that so. Yeah, but my question to you is what do you think? And you, I don't know if you have an answer for this, but how would your dad have responded, do you think, to just all of this stuff with AI and art just in general and this specific case?
Well, he was always very adamant about no one putting words in his own mouth. Yeah. So when he would speak to journalists, he would make sure they recorded the conversation. And there used to be, before he died in 2008, there were these email memes that would go around. And there was a couple of them that pretended or claimed that George Carlin had written them. And they were kind of Carlin-esque sounding. They would kind of have the rhythm or the lilt or the kind of the comparison of things, oh, the young is the old and the old is the young. And he put, when we did his website, this is early 2000s when we did his website, he put right on the front of his website, "This is not me." These things that you people keep shuffling around in your little email boxes is not me. And he was enraged by it. So I could extrapolate from that reaction that he would have been completely enraged by this AI thing. And I think he would have seen this AI thing as more arrogance of the human species.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I always wonder about that, how he would have thought about it. I also I think, when you said that W. Kamau Bell reached out to you, were there other comedians? I think if they're seeing this, it probably makes them think that it's this. And you even called out in your tweet, you called out, I think, Robin Williams' daughter and was it Joan Rivers' daughter saying next. So are there other comedians who've kind of gotten in touch with you about, what you're doing, the legal action, just in terms of something that could potentially happen to them? And because there's no guardrails for this. I don't think there's any legal system for how to fight this yet, or it's being
not yet. They're working on it. Yeah. There is legislation called the AI Fraud Act that is moving through Congress right now. And they just had a big hearing here in LA about a month ago. But yeah, a lot of people reached out, whether it was on Twitter or, on my texting or whatever. And were concerned and really saw us as the tip of the spear. First, especially before we found out that AI had not written the special, everyone thought like, oh my God, this is like a huge, huge throwing down the gauntlet for AI. And please fight this. What can we do? I had people offering to raise money and let's go for it. And of course I had lawyers approaching me, and the lawyer that did approach me, who's representing us, was ready to go, all the way to the Supreme Court with this, big time and all of that. Turned out not to be that kind of a case, but sure. Absolutely. People are very concerned by this, and artists are extremely concerned. And we're already seeing it with music acts. It's already happened there. And then of course, Zelda Williams, Robin's daughter, told me that they had already, there was somebody had used their dad's voice in something, or tried to AI his voice or something, where they had to shut it down right away. And that happened last year at some point. I hadn't even heard about that at the time. So it's, it's already, people are testing, people will test. That's what they do. How far, what can we get away with? What can we get away with? And then suddenly it's precedent, and then you're screwed. So that's why I'm glad this AI Fraud Act is going forward, which would really protect anybody, not just creatives, but anybody from their name and likeness, or any kind of their likeness being used and being generated through machine to be used by fraud, because they're already doing it to, I heard a case where they replicated a young girl's voice, a teenage girl's voice, and used it to call the parents to extort some money from them, claiming she'd been kidnapped. I mean,
yeah, the way that you can use this maliciously, I mean, it's endless. If you start
it's insane. And that's the thing about all this stuff is, watch Oppenheimer. It's like it's a nuclear bomb type of a thing. It's like we haven't even come up with the ways that it could damage you know, reputations, democracy. I mean, you know, we're just starting to think about the potential of it. And of course, there is real potential for it, as there is for any kind of artificial intelligence. I mean, I do enjoy my spelling corrected things in my documents. I mean, that's artificial intelligence, you know. I mean, it's like we've already been in that world a lot already, but this is now replication. And then this is also some sort of weird thing it wants to go towards, which is like manufactured humanity, you know, like
manufactured humanity. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's like it wants to manufacture humans now, wants to take actors and scan them and then just put them into movies. So there's no actual human doing that. And then, of course, there's the manufacture of ideas, not through human imagination, not through human experience, not through the human mind, which is a flawed thing, but it is some sort of replicant of it. And I don't really understand the point of that. How is that going to make the world a better place?
I mean,
if they don't label it. I mean, if they label it, that's different. But I understand a machine or artificial intelligence that could possibly find a tumor in a body or something like that. I mean, that's amazing. There's probably engineering things or whatever that, like, whatever the human senses can't do. We have telescopes, we have microscopes to you know, to extend our senses, which I think is a good thing. But if we're going to manufacture human experience or humans, we need to be very careful.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, that AI, even if it's very, very good at it, it can be derivative. It can't, like, you know, the original human experiences that you have. You know, I had another comedian, his name's Vishnu Vaka. He's really funny if you haven't heard of him, but he was saying the same thing. He said, you know, I have a very unique human experience that I talk about. AI can't replicate. It can't come up with the original stuff. It can sort of derive and look at my style and come up with, you know, premises that are documented somewhere, that's pulled from somewhere, but it can't riff on a personal experience that's unique and interesting, right?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, if you watched movies the last 50 years or so, we've watched characters in movies become a character, an AI version of a character. HAL being the first one in 2001, where, you know, it has its own, but it has an agenda. It's an agenda that's been put into it in some ways. And can it become sentient in some way? I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Is sentience possible in a machine? And even if it is, it's not human sentience.
No, it's not. It's not. It's going to be different, and it's not going to be, if it's sentient, then it's going to be its own independent being. You know, there's this aspect of AI, though, that it's here. It's not going to go away, right? So it's just part of our world now, like you said, you know, from whether it's autocorrect or, you know, the spelling corrections in your documents and so on. And so you know, do you remember the whole Napster thing when they first had the MP3s and people were sort of trading music for free? And then they regulated it, and now you've got streaming, you had Apple Music, or you had, you know, Spotify and all of these things that came in and sort of regulated it in a way, but it was a big hit to the music industry. I don't know, Metallica was out there suing them.
Still are. I mean, all those groups are we're still fighting Spotify. I mean, we're in a big suit right now with Pandora. So yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it's basically, so the idea was that they're stealing, you know, their creativity, their art, you know, their intellectual property. But it stayed, it didn't go away. And there was they just found a way to sort of incorporate it into life. Now everybody does it and everybody's used to it. Is there any analogy here with that? I mean, not in terms of like impersonation, but is there any way to, like, how do you foresee bringing AI, if it's something that has to stay and that's going to become part of our world? How do you foresee it being regulated in that sense? If it comes in to, like, is there any way comedians and artists can collaborate with it and make it sort of meet in the middle somehow?
I don't know. You know, humans evolve because they learn. Machines learn faster, but humans evolve because they learn. And what we have seen the last 25 years, starting with Napster, starting with the music industry being gutted, and that talent pool having their ability to anybody to make a decent living off of it, unless you're Taylor Swift or someone really big, right? And then social media I think was the next step in 2008. We were all like fascinated by it, had no idea what was going to happen with it, did not understand the potential, the negative or the positive potential of it. But we just kind of gave all of our data away willingly because we wanted to see what our friends from high school were doing.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, all these, you know, maybe the initial person has some sort of naive, like, oh, I just want to connect people. Oh, I just want to listen to music and share music with my friends. Lovely. But the unintended consequences have been horrific. And especially with social media. And I really see this is the same way. And I'm really glad that, yes, AI is here. We need to deal with it, but we are all pushing back pretty hard so far. At least the entertainment industry is trying to, at least individuals in the entertainment industry are. Now, the corporate billionaires, the overlords, they're doing this like everyone else. Oh boy, free content, you know, cheap labor. But it's hitting every industry. And I think there's a lot of industries that have not been touched by this kind of thing. The entertainment industry has been fighting it for 25 years now. But I was just talking to someone today about it, about how in the legal industry, law clerks are going to be replaced by AI.
Yeah.
They're not, because they're just going to be able to scan text and here's this and here's that. And there's going to be some sort of algorithm of logic to use to help build a case or whatever. And then how do you create good judges or good lawyers if you don't have law clerks? You know what I mean? It's like this, it's a culture that needs to be in place, because that's how people learn the craft, learn their business, learn how to live into it, how they serve people. So, you know, I don't know. I have no idea. I believe that every artist has the complete right to control everything that they've made. Yeah. And that they get to decide and negotiate the price in a fair marketplace. And also, if you have, you know, those who try to support and protect those who've lived in the past and have a body of work, you know, I feel like we have the right in this country, of the right for 100 years to protect that intellectual property until it becomes fair use. In fact, my lawyer is one of the biggest fair use lawyers out there. He's very much an advocate of fair use. He is very much against the use of AI to pillage people's intellectual property because he doesn't see it as a fair use issue at all. Yeah.
And is there a potential, I mean, do you think, it is very competitive, and I know that this is happening in other industries in the business world, and people using AI they've incorporated it to enhance their work in a way, or actually in some ways delegate and
replace it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like they're, you know, the
letter. Great. Yay.
Yeah, write a
letter for me.
A dignified apology to my boss, or, you know, like texting, you know, romantic messages to their partner, things like that. Like people are doing it for all kinds of things. But do you think that there's is there any way, do you see comedians and artists potentially using AI to help enhance their process, or give them ideas, or help with, like, I had this, you know, I don't know if you know about this software Miro, right? That has, it's kind of like Jamboard. You can have sort of, you can do mind maps and things on it, and you can just give it a topic and it'll just generate a mind, like stuff that takes 2 hours of brainstorming just shows up all of these different categories just right in its AI extension. And
it's not the human imagination, though.
It isn't. Yeah.
It's a machine making connections that are kind of almost are pre-selected based on a single algorithm of some kind, or some sort of approach to an algorithm. You know, if you and I got together to brainstorm something, we would come up with one thing. And then if I went and brainstormed with Lewis Black, we would come up with something else. And then if Lewis Black and you got together, you guys brainstormed something. I don't think AI can replicate that. I don't think it can ever replicate the unique, individual, fascinating arena of the human imagination. I mean, our unconscious is incredible. And we are these strange meat bodies that have created this consciousness, that have evolved to this consciousness. Is it perfect? No. Is it flawed? Yes.
But that's the whole point. You know,
but that's the whole point. The reason you listen to music or comedy or listen to a story or a lot of other things is not just for it's the entertainment value. It's because there's some sort of human thing that happened. Whether you know it's a human, I mean, especially with comedy, it's like comedy is all about humans meeting humans. You know, my dad was as successful as he was because he had a way of hitting the pulse of humanity like no other person. You know, and then he had his unique spin on it. And that's what all, great comedians are about, or any kind of communicator, really, any kind of writer, author, singer, songwriter. And it's the fact that humans are doing it that we become, awe is an important aspect of art, being in awe of it, being of like, wow, how did wow, that's amazing that we are capable of this thing. If it's just a machine, it's like, oh, a machine is capable of this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a lot of it comes down to, as I was thinking about this, I was like, supposing in the future, there is an AI that came up with a George Carlin special that was like well beyond this. And it really did sound like him. And it was genuinely funny. Anything, would I care? Like if it's not, and then I realized with a lot of times with art, it's about connecting to the person making it. Like, it's the idea that, if you listen to, say, if you're going through a rough time in your life, you listen to it. And I told you about this. After my dad died, I'd listen to, like, the only way I could go to sleep, I'd listen to George Carlin specials the whole time. So he helped me through that. And when I heard it, I was like, okay, I'm actually connecting to this person, right? It's not just a content, but I'm actually connecting with this person. Like, so this person has gone through what I'm going through, or you're hearing a song. This musician, when they wrote this, they were in the same spot that I was.
They get this moment of pain or joy or whatever it is. Yes,
that I'm not alone, right? That there was somebody else who's been through this, and you can't. It's not just about the words or the content. It's about connecting to another human being who has been through the same thing and is expressing it.
I mean, Ali, my biggest terror is that we are already dehumanized so much through social media. We've already dehumanized each other so much. And now we do it instantly and on a global level. It used to take a lot to dehumanize a group of people that were far away that you never saw them before. Now you can dehumanize someone because they wear a red hat with writing on it.
Yeah.
And then, and so then to fill the limited amount of space there is for us to take in and have shared experiences as humans, which is usually through art. That's where we get to share our human experience. To then even eliminate the human from that, what will we have left to relate to?
Yeah.
How will we learn to relate to each other? how will we learn to know what it means to be human? You know, you know, colleges and politicians want to gut the humanities out of upper level education now. STEM is everything in elementary and in high school and junior high. Without the humanities, where are we learning about that we are all together and we're not alone? You know, that someone wrote a novel 200 years ago about something of different culture completely, and yet they're having the human experience of loss or jealousy or fear, or, you know, wanting to fight for their cause, like whatever it is. Manufactured humanity. What's that? You know, why should we care then? How will we know what that is? You know, you were saying about a lot of people are using AI to like write letters or texts or whatever. You know, not everyone's great with their words. Not everyone knows how to communicate well. It's an interesting use of it, right? To be able to like say the words that I don't know how to say. That's, you know, and yet if you were on the receiving end of that and thought that's what the person just said to you, it's a lie. So it's like, also, you know, it's like, it's really, really tricky.
It is tricky. I think, and the thing with AI generated content, this is, you know, obviously different where someone wrote it and then they put it through an AI voice, which is its own issue. And I think that may be worse in some ways, but
I agree that it was worse.
Yeah, it's much worse. And it's, yeah, it should legally have more
especially as a comic. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. There's but if you have, I think that, you know, one thing I noticed, so I did, and I'm sorry about that, but I did listen to not all of it. I couldn't listen to all the special. I couldn't deal with it, but I did listen to some of it. And I noticed there's another aspect of it that's missing, that there are punchlines, there are jokes, you know, it's been constructed the way that and this is, I guess, more of an insult to the comedian who did it. But there was, you know, the underlying, every time George Carlin talked about something, you know, with the 7 dirty words, he talked about that. There was an underlying commentary. There was a context to it. It wasn't just about here's 7 dirty words and it's so funny. It was about censorship. It's about what words mean. It's about how context matters, right? And it's not the word itself that means anything. It's we're the ones who give it meaning. There were so many layers to, and that's just one example.
Yes.
Pretty much everything that he talked about was about that. It had multiple layers, and depending on, and I would, you know, if I listened to it when I was 16, I would hear, you know, one side of it that I thought was funny. And then, you know, I'd listen to it 10 years later and discover a whole new layer based on new insights I developed. And that part of it, I'm just wondering how AI would tackle that. Like that aspect, because that's a whole other realm of human experience.
I agree. It's very subtle. And, you know, there's the holding of the string of a metaphor inside of something. There's a understanding the contextualization of a shared history together as humans and Americans. You know, he brought so much to the table with that. And I don't think AI, machines are going to get very, very good. And maybe they are able to plug in something like that. But I can't imagine, if you're not a human, how you could ever replicate that or understand, you know. Also, you know, there's something about the subtlety of energy exchanged through communication. I mean, you know, you've studied this, that, you know, what is it, like 90% of communication is nonverbal?
Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, a lot of it's nonverbal. I mean, you can have you can't see body language. You can't understand.
That's why social media is so horrible, because you're just floating text back and forth to each other. Emojis try to add the nonverbal part to it. Like, that's what emojis are attempting.
Yeah.
They do and they don't, right? They
I
try to
can't tell you
create.
how many fights people have had over interpreting the wrong tone. It's like, no, I meant that as a joke. And then you've been fighting on text for the next 2 hours and you meet 2 days like, no, I didn't even mean that. I didn't. That's
Right,
what,
exactly.
yeah.
Because tone is everything. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure eventually they'll be able to train that in some way into a machine, but there's something about, you know, it's the difference between listening to a record and then going to see the person live. You know, like, yeah, the record is a great experience, and we laugh at the George Carlin records, or we love the music from whoever, right? But then you go have a live experience, and the thing about comedy is, in order for stand-up comedy, it has to be done in front of a live audience.
Yeah. Yes. And that's where the energy's, yeah, you're talking about the energy.
I mean, it just has,
they talk about,
there's no other way to do it. And so even that's part of the special was so weird, because it was like, oh, we're going to manufacture the reaction to this thing also. And so and it just feels, that's part of the weirdness of it too. It's like, it's canned and canned and canned on both sides. It's just so weird.
Yeah, you see, I think even sort of legendary established comedians, you know, when they've done, I know Norm Macdonald, his last special, which was actually quite good, but it was done without an audience. And it just wasn't even the greats. You know, they without the audience, it's just, I mean, that's a huge part of it. And it brings a community aspect to it, right? That you're laughing with other people. You're enjoying this.
It is the art form. There is no stand-up comedy without an audience. Yeah. It's not stand-up comedy anymore. Then it's just a monologue in a room. Yeah. It's, you know, and my dad was a great monologist. I mean, that's what he was. He was an orator, but he depended on the feedback and the flow and being fed by the energy and getting the laugh or getting the groan or whatever it was, you know? So, yeah.
I have 2 more questions, and this one might be a little bit cynical, but you know, so you obviously, you know, you talked about all the fury that you had, but do you see the potential for, if there are children or families of late artists who may actually find this to be an opportunity and may license out their parents or their family members' likenesses to
more power to them? As long as they have the power to do it and it's their decision, more power to them. They can make their loved ones holograms. They can make their loved ones write new songs through AI. But as long as they are choosing it and they're getting paid for it, absolutely.
Okay, so that's a position, right? It's basically about autonomy. You having the people getting
autonomy and agency. Yes, it's exactly what it's about.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, you know, we've talked about you and like Me Too or advocates for creativity, for authenticity. I think that AI has a lot of great uses, and you know, for instance, like we said, in the healthcare world, when it comes to technology, it can save lives, it can do all kinds of things. And communications also, it has a lot of use. But with the arts, that's where I think, you know, when you talk about manufactured humanity, I mean, that's a great phrase. So that's something that I find very, very cringy, like when it gets into the arts and people are connecting to something that's not really human. So what would you say right now to fellow sort of creators and audiences about the role of AI, right, when it comes to shaping the future of comedy and artistic expression? Like, what are your thoughts on it if you were to give advice to people or to younger people coming up in the comedy and arts world?
Be very, very careful.
Very careful.
You're playing with fire. It's Prometheus. I mean, really, this is what this is. Again, you know, watch Oppenheimer. You know, we're screwing with things that we don't know the power of what it is. And especially, I mean, any kind of performing art, luckily, we need humans to be performers.
Yeah.
So do the work, live your life, be involved. You know, AI, it's almost like there's some sort of, again, you know, one thing I talked about in my statement was that, first of all, let dead people be dead. Like you don't get to know what George Carlin would think.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
That's the point of them being dead. We don't get to know what George Carlin thinks about A, B, or C. You can extrapolate all you want. And even as a daughter, I can extrapolate, but I will never know. And I'm not George Carlin. So then I can't tell you. So there's that piece of it. But, you know, there's this thing about perfectionism too. And I feel like AI is another attempt towards some sort of utopian perfect world where there's no flaws and there's no messiness. Boy, that would be, I mean, you know, those of us who are perfectionists, you know, our fantasy of a perfect thing that we do, or, you know, or it being all exactly fitting in what it is, or, you know, whatever it is, that perfectionism, idealistic dream, which is ridiculous, is in the end very soul killing, because it's in our messiness, it's in our flaws, it's in our blind spots, it's in our shadow that we actually are. That is what humanity is. That is our humanity. And the more we can learn to live with that, the freer we are, and the more we all feel like we belong in some way. And so, you know, I know it's probably tempting to want to play with these things, and no one says you can't do it in your own living room, but just don't make money off someone else's name or likeness or style, or, you know, be original. And like you said, AI for now and for a while, I think, will always be a derivative thing. It'll be a manufactured derivative output. And no one as a real artist wants to be derivative unless you do it on purpose to make a point. So if you want to use AI on purpose to make a point about something, then use it as a tool. Use it as another, you know, tool of your artistic process. But let people know, or make that part of your puzzle that you're creating for people as an artist. But don't use it to replace your own experience. You know, you need 10,000 hours no matter what to understand a craft and an art form. Enjoy the 10,000 hours. Enjoy the learning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a process, actually. A lot of times
it's all process, and we want to believe the product. This is the problem with it. We want to believe it's all about product. Yeah, you know, and these content creator people, it's all about product. It's not.
It's a process. I think that's the thing that gets taken out, I think. And I'm happy. Like, I think if an AI developed a personality and had its own unique experiences as an AI, I'd love to hear about that. That'd be super interesting.
Sure.
See how does an AI experience the world versus humans? That would be great. But it would be authentic in its own sense, in that sense. But yeah, this is
in its own lane. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And is there anything, what are you working on? So you've had this documentary, which was, again, I want to tell everybody it's amazing, especially for, you know, fans of George Carlin. And you have the book. Is there, what else, are you working on anything right now? Any projects?
I'm doing a lot of teaching right now, wrapping up a course right now. We're starting in May, our course, True Self, which we help people work with saboteurs and inner saboteurs, and how to get out of your own way. And we work with the autonomic nervous system to calm it down, and questioning our shadow selves and all that kind of stuff. And if you go to my website, kellycarlin.com, get on my mailing list, you can hear all about that. I also have a year-long coaching program called, well, it's still called Humans on the Verge. And I'm about to launch my own podcast, which I used to have a podcast before called Waking from the American Dream. All those episodes are still up, but I am launching a new podcast also called Humans on the Verge in the next couple of months. And so we're just working on those kind of things. So lots of teaching, some coaching, doing some writing right now in the background, working on some pieces that probably won't see the light of day for about another year or so. But Yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to tell the audience, like, Kelly does some really, really interesting work on her own. We had an episode about this. We talked about this last time. It was a few years ago. It was during the pandemic. And I really, really enjoyed that. That was great. Like, actually hearing you. So you were talking about your own work in that, and it was just fantastic. So I'll link to that also in the description. You guys can check it out.
Oh, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And if people are interested in doing some work on what blocks them and gets in their way, powerful course starting in May called True Self. So come join us.
I love it. All right. So as always, if you're watching this on YouTube, please take a quick second to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you can be informed when we have future episodes. If you're hearing this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the other streaming platforms that we talked about today that we're all fighting against, then please give us a rating. That helps put this in front of more people. And I think these conversations are probably going to be a lot more conversations about this topic in the future. So, and on Instagram, we're at Unlicensed Therapist Podcast for all information, clips, and upcoming shows. Right, Kelly, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Bye.